Hello, America. Today is the 75th anniversary of D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. The Allied invasion force included 5,000 ships, landing craft, 11,000 planes, and almost 3 million Allied soldiers, airmen, and sailors, all just trying to stop Adolf Hitler and his madness. Despite such numbers, the location and the timing of the invasion was still an enormous gamble. The Nazis fully expected an invasion. They just didn't know exactly where it would be. Despite the enormous, outrageous logistics involved, the gamble worked, and by the end of June 6, 1944, 156,000 Allied troops were ashore in Normandy, France. The human cost was enormous. Over 4,900 American troops died on D-Day. That number doubled over the next month that they fought to establish a foothold in northern France. There were 5 beaches that were landing zones on the coast of northwestern France, and they were divided among the Allies. And we were giving these beaches different names, a code name. Canada was responsible for Juno. Britain was responsible for Gold and Sword, and the U.S. had Utah and Omaha. The Nazis were dug into bunkers, machine guns, artillery mines, barbed wire, all kinds of obstacles. So if anybody would try to come ashore, they would be cut to ribbons. Of the 5 beaches, Omaha was by far the most heavily defended. That's the one we took. Over 2,500 U.S. soldiers were killed at Omaha. The beach was so famously depicted in the opening battle sequence of the 1998 movie Saving Private Ryan. But the real-life assault on Omaha Beach included 34 men in that first wave of attack who came from the very same small town. That town is Bedford, Virginia. The first Americans to die on Omaha Beach were the men from Bedford. America has a D-Day memorial, but most people don't even know anything about it because it's not in Washington, D.C. It wasn't a government project. It was initiated and financed by veterans and private citizens. It's tucked away in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the small town of Bedford, Virginia. Why? Why is this memorial for one of the most famous days in modern world history in such a tiny town? Well, because as a proportion of the population of just 3,200 at the time, no community in the U.S. sacrificed more men on D-Day than that little small town. There were 34 men in Company A from Bedford. Of those 34, 23 died in the first wave of attacks, 6 weeks after D-Day. 6 weeks after D-Day, the town started to really feel it. The young telegraph officer was overwhelmed when the news of many of the first deaths clattered across Western Union's lines the same day. Name after name after name of men and families that the telegraph operator knew well. There were so many at once that she had to enlist the help of customers in the pharmacy's soda shop to help deliver them all. Among those killed in action were 2 brothers of Bedford. And it was Bedford and Raymond Hoback. Bedford was the rambunctious older brother with a fiancée back home that he couldn't wait to return to. Raymond was a little more quiet, more disciplined, and he was the younger brother who could often be found reading his Bible. He fell in love with a British woman during the 2 years in England training for D-Day. And just like in that opening sequence of Saving Private Ryan, Bedford and Raymond barely made it down the ramp of their Higgins boat in the swarm of bullets and hot steel before they were cut down in the wet sand. Bedford and Raymond Hoback's mother was Macy. She learned of both of their deaths from 2 separate telegrams. The first one was on a Sunday morning, the second the following day. Their younger sister, Lucille, remembered her mother's devastation and her father just walking out to the barn to cry alone. The day after D-Day was called D-Day +1. The killing field of Omaha Beach was already transforming into a massive supply port that would help fuel the American drive all the way to Berlin over the next year. And on the beach, there walked a soldier from West Virginia. He saw something that was jutting out of the sand, and he reached down and pulled it out. He was surprised to find that it was a Bible. The inside cover was inscribed with Raymond S. Hoback from Mother, Christmas, 1938. That soldier wrote this letter, July 9, 1944, somewhere in France. He said, Mr. and Mrs. Hobart, I don't know how to start this letter to you folks, but I'll attempt to do some in the words of writing. I was walking along the beach in D-Day +1, and I came up to this Bible. And as most any person would do, I picked it up out of the sand to keep it from being destroyed. I knew that most all Bibles have names and addresses inside the cover, so I made it my business to thumb through. I came to the pages with the name above. Knowing that you would want your Bible returned, I'm sending it, knowing that most Bibles are a book to be cherished. You have by now received a letter from your son saying he is well. I certainly hope so. The letter goes on. He didn't know that both boys had been killed. Of the 23 Bedford men who died on Omaha Beach, 11 were laid to rest in the American Cemetery in Normandy. These men, many of them barely out of their teens, didn't sign up just to march into a slaughter. They had hopes and dreams like you and me. Many of them signed up for adventure or because of peer pressure. And many of them signed up for a sense of honor and duty. Many of the Bedford boys signed up for the National Guard just to make a few extra bucks per month, get out to hang out with their buddies and enjoy target practice. But someone had to be the first at Omaha Beach, and that responsibility fell to the men from Bedford.